Well, hello, good morning, Amy, and thanks for agreeing to spend some time with me this morning. We were kind of interested to talk to you because we're finding in discussions with individuals who are performing the role of chair that we're hearing more and more frequently that the role is becoming quite onerous, very comprehensive in part, and some people are thinking twice about taking these roles on. We feel that COVID's had a part to play in that, particularly as a lot of chairs have had to navigate that environment, prolonged their sort of tenure in role and taken their organisations through quite sort of challenging times. And as a result, there might be a sort of general feeling of a bit of fatigue, some exhaustion, and some cautiousness now around taking on another role in the immediate future.
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's lovely to chat to you today. So I think the biggest challenges that I find are probably what most people find, which is the balance of everything in life when you're a chair, right? So I have a full-time demanding job. I am the trustee of another charity, and I'm the chair of the Change Project. And somewhere in there, I have a life. So balancing all of that is always a challenge. And I think feeling as though you're doing a good job at all of those things. And I think that is a challenge for everyone, to feel as though that they are doing a good job. But equally, I think it's also recognizing that you can't do 100% in all of those things all of the time, and giving yourself the space to kind of feel that and acknowledge that and be okay with that, I guess. And I think personally for me, within the Change Project, we've recently hired many new board members, myself included. So I'm new into the organisation as the chair. So I think it's a challenge for us right now personally to kind of onboard everyone, for me to get to know everyone, both, you know, the paid employees, our volunteers, and our new board members. And working out a structure and a governance model that works for everyone is also something that we're working through. And then I think the final thing that's personally a challenge for us, and probably many other charities now, is that so much more has become virtual through COVID, which I think is an incredible positive, because it means you can get people into the board who maybe wouldn't have been able to otherwise if you had always had face-to-face meetings. But I think there's a balance to that with getting to know people when you haven't met them yet, and building that kind of face-to-face relationship before taking that relationship virtual. As I mentioned, many of our board members are new, but equally we have a fair amount that are ongoing with us. So I think it's taking those learnings from those that have been around longer to help with that onboarding process, to understand the organisation. We, despite being a virtual organisation, we're having a face-to-face strategy meeting before the year is out, in order to have some of that face-to-face relationship building time before we kind of continue with our board meetings to be virtual ongoing. And then I think it's about spending some time just listening and understanding from those that work in the charity and everyone that kind of contributes, as to how the board is run today, and maybe if there's changes that what you want to make, you know, listening and understanding what everyone thinks about that before just going full steam ahead and making those changes. I'm a very strong proponent that a chair is just another trustee that happens to kind of guide and lead. They don't have any additional say or an extra vote. You know, they're not more important than anyone else on the board. So I think it's about that kind of collaboration and that listening. And I think the final thing I'd say that is really key about improving that contribution and the governance is recruitment, right? But recruitment is key, because when you start right at the beginning in recruiting a diverse set of skills, backgrounds, etc., you already set yourself up for success in terms of people's contribution and governance and the skills that they bring to the table that maybe other people on your board don't have, so that you're really balancing everything that might come up well. I think for me personally, having been a trustee on another board for a number of years, I've had the benefit of watching and learning some other chairs that I've worked with on that board and taking what you think is great and maybe leaving what you don't think is that great. So I've had the real benefit of doing that. And I think many chairs get that opportunity before becoming a chair themselves. I think as well, the Charity Commission website has a lot of great tools and resources. Actually, you kind of have to dive into it and find where those are, but they are available and they are really useful in terms of tips and tricks for chairing and how to do that effectively. And then my other thing that I think I would say is just asking for feedback, you know, and getting the rest of the board, but also the CEO and others to kind of provide some feedback on what they think is going well and what they don't think is going well, and giving them the feeling that they can provide that feedback and speak up when they don't think something is necessarily going well. I think giving everyone a voice means that a board is most effective because people don't feel like it's being run in a way that they aren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
I can't promise that I have the answers to that question. What I would say is, I think going back to the first point I kind of made around not feeling as though you have to do 100% of your best all the time in every aspect of your life. I think we all have to be a little bit kinder to ourselves in that regard. But also I think it's asking for support and help when you need it. You know, there is a whole board there and a whole organization that are also part of that, and not taking that whole kind of responsibility as the chairperson, that you are, you know, having to take on all of that responsibility. But I think I would just say to anyone thinking about becoming a chair or a trustee is, I am a very strong proponent of diversity on boards, not just of education, background, etc., but really, really of age. And I think many people with full-time jobs kind of rule themselves out of doing this, because it is an extra burden when you have a full-time job versus potentially when you're retired and you have more time and you can bring that skills and expertise. And I think many people rule themselves out because of that. And I would just encourage anyone who's thinking about it to go for it, because it is a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it is incredibly rewarding and one of the absolute best things I've ever chosen to do. So I would just encourage people to go for it, even though it is a challenge.
Thank you, Amy. That's a really positive note to end it on. Thanks so much for your time this morning.